It is my pleasure to introduce our next panel, Big Game, Big Opportunity, How the Landscape of Soccer is Evolving in the U.S. Market. Moderated by my friend, colleague, and former boss, way back in the day, at the World Cup in 1994. Actually, my boss's boss's boss, right? Sunil Gulati, professor in SEPA economics, professor here, longtime member and incredibly well regarded member of our faculty. With Nico Garcia-Hemming, good to see you, Nico. Akash Jain from the Premier League, D. Kundra from FC Bayern, and Andy Mitchell from Serie A. So thank you, everyone. Sunil, take it away.
So thank you all for coming. When we saw the list, one of my colleagues on the panel said, not a great situation, we have to follow the commissioner of the NBA. And my comment to that was the warm-up, the pregame for the real sport of soccer, which is what we're going to talk about today. And I said that to the commissioner when he walked off stage, so we're good there. So we're here to talk about American soccer, but more importantly, for today's conference, international soccer in the United States. And we've got 4 great panelists to join us, some great opportunities, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, not just in the next couple of years with the World Cup coming, but even beyond that in developing the game in the United States. So let's get right to it, folks. And I'll ask each of you how you, from the point of view of your organization, or even personally to some degree, view this opportunity going forward. And we can start at the end, Akash, you're at the other end of the panel. How does the Premier League view this opportunity?
Well, thanks, Sunil. Really excited to be here with the other panelists. I think from our perspective, huge opportunity in the U.S. Obviously, the massive global events that are coming over the next couple of years, sort of view that as a megaphone for the sport. Obviously, a fan base for the sport has grown substantially over the last 15 to 20 years as access to global football. We're going to use the word football and soccer interchangeably. Sunil, if that's okay, has been tremendous. And so the opportunities that are coming for all of the leagues and clubs here are going to be really, really exciting. I think from our perspective, we're in a fortunate position that our media partner, NBC, has just done an amazing job of accelerating the growth of our fan base and audience over the last decade. And we opened an office here just about a year ago to support their efforts and continue to give more opportunities for our fans to be able to engage with our competition, our clubs, our players, et cetera. And with the big global events coming, we really see that more and more of these young, diverse, casual and fans of other sports are going to come in to sample our great sport. And that provides us a significant opportunity to hopefully drive relevance, interest, and engagement with new audiences. And so it's just a tremendously exciting time for the sport overall and our league as well.
Absolutely, and incredibly important 2 years coming up, but I think it's important to say that Bayern Munich, we've had an office in New York since 2014, so one of the first clubs to set up an office here with a purely marketing focus about how are we going to grow our brand, how are we going to grow our reach in this region. So the club had great foresight. Obviously, the next few years coming up are a great opportunity, a great catalyst to kind of really ramp up that opportunity to grow our fan base. But it's going to have its own problems. It's going to be very cluttered. We're all doing the same thing. So, we'll come on to talk about that, but it's a great opportunity. And we always get asked, why has a German club come and set up an office in New York? Why would you do that? And we always say, well, look, we hear that there's 100 million people interested in football in the US alone. That's bigger than the population of Germany. So why wouldn't we try and really capitalize on that potential?
The timing is really good for us. I feel like I got really lucky landing this job about 1.5 years ago, right when I joined Christian Pulisic. Joined Serie A, obviously the highest profile American, or maybe not obviously, but to me and many others, the highest profile American player. Serie A has been on a real roll lately. We've earned a 5th Champions League spot, so because of our success across the European competitions, and we've had 4 different winners over the last 5 years. So it's a really exciting time for Calcio, which is the Italian word for soccer or football. It's a really exciting time and a great time to be entering this market.
Nico.
Thanks a lot for having us. First of all, in 2018, we saw the opportunity of the US market, but we understood that we couldn't just come open an office like we did in other markets and try to attack the US. It's just too complicated, too competitive, and too crowded. So we established a joint venture with Relevant Sports for 20 years. We understood that it was not a marketing leg of a league. It has to be its own business. It has to be profitable. It has to be sustainable. Since then, we've brokered the 2 biggest media deals of La Liga outside of Spain, both with ESPN in the US and Sky in Mexico for over $2 billion across the duration of the agreements. We've generated 77 million in revenues. If you take that money, it's like 36 million of that have been reinvested in the market, which is important. And then 41 million have been shared with the clubs, so they can do that too. They can start growing internationally. And yeah, I think it's been a hell of a ride, but we are like in for the rest of the time, I'll say.
Still early days.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me ask a slightly, and it's a related question, obviously. Tell us something specific that you're going to do in this market. And that doesn't have to be something that you've made specifically for the market, but that you're doing here. And this is going to get tougher for the last person that goes. I'm going to ask you not to repeat anything someone else has said about doing a game or a promotion. Something specific you're doing in the American market. We'll start at this end. Make it easy.
Yeah, I think in the end, the whole goal, and try to kind of group what we do, it's try to get closer to our fans. And no matter who you are, where you are, and how you relate to soccer, La Liga wants to have something in front of you. So that goes from events that we organize for casual fans that maybe don't follow La Liga every day, but they are happy to go with their friends to enjoy El Clásico or other games in the US. We have a platform called El Partidazo. We organized 40 events across 10 cities last year. Our distribution strategy with ESPN, we think, is one of the best because you have all 380 games on ESPN+. One single play is very easy to find. So if you are a core fan, you have that. And for example, if you are a gamer, you play FC25, you don't watch games, but you know all players by heart, we have a gaming program for you. Similar with grassroots and academies, we've developed different grassroots programs in order to make sure that even these kids that don't care about any of us, they just care about soccer, we have the capacity to be with them while they grow and develop their soccer skill or their soccer career to whatever level they want. I'm sorry because I threw a lot of them at you guys, so maybe...
Oh, they got nothing left to say.
Yeah,
no,
it's going
to be really hard for the rest of them. Well done.
But it goes in that sense, having as many opportunities to tap whoever you are and however you related with soccer.
Andy?
As Dee said, it's a very crowded market with all of us and others taking on the market. So what we really try to think about is how do we differentiate Serie A from the other leagues around that are now in this market. And for us, there's an obvious answer, Italy. Americans love Italy. We did some research. 51 million Americans have an affinity for Italy. 3 million Americans or so travel to Italy every year. So we really try and think about Italian culture as a major differentiator and connect Calcio to whether it be fashion, industry, food, et cetera. And then secondly, I mentioned travel. So how do we connect these 3 million Americans and their travels to Italy to Italian soccer? Because we know that once somebody goes to a game, they buy a shirt and they come back home and they're fans for life. So that's really the key differentiator in how we're really focusing on the market.
And when we look at FC Bayern from our office in New York, we kind of focus on 3 pillars. So there's the corporate partnerships, which kind of all of you guys will focus on, and under that falls brand alliances as well. So that's our relationship and partnership with the NFL, for example. We started working with them years ago when you were there to basically collaborate on content and, create a crossover between our fan bases. And the aim was always to have a regular season game in Germany at the Allianz Arena. The second one is actually in just a month or so at the Allianz Arena. So that's kind of an example of that pillar. Then we've got our marketing and media. again, the cut through is hard. So what is our story? Next year we turn 125 years old. So we've got an incredible heritage. So how are we using that to cut through and kind of differentiate ourselves and our stories from everyone else? Then we've got the grassroots pillar. Every club will say that they want to offer young players a pathway to their first team. It's really hard to play for Bayern Munich's first team. So what we're offering is an advanced grassroots program. So young players can start in a camp, an ID camp. Then they could go on to the Youth Cup. From there, they could go on to the World Squad. From there, they could go on to the Global Academy. But through this advanced grassroots program, we really try and cater to three audiences. There's the audience where there's young kids whose parents just want to put them in summer camps and keep them occupied. Or there's players who want to get scholarships and go to school. Or there's players who want to play professionally. How do we work with them to get them to play for other first teams around the world?
Anything left? Yeah.
You got to go first, now it's last. And
Yeah,
tougher.
A few specific things. I think first and foremost for us, as I mentioned, our media partner, NBC, who's done an amazing job of presenting our competition to fans here. And so we're spending a lot of time with them just figuring out how do we give fans more reasons to watch live. They've done an amazing job of creating a unique time slot, appointment viewing, Saturday and Sunday mornings, which is fantastic. And so what we're talking a lot about is how do we make match week more relevant? There's tremendous stories across the league, our clubs, our players, and how do we feed that to our fans so that, again, it results in more consumption of our programming across NBC's platform. So spending a lot of time with NBC on that too. We have really accelerated the amount of localized digital and social content. One of the interesting things that we've seen over the last year and some of the fan research that we've done is fandom for our league in the US is really broad and varied. There's so many different ways that fans come into the league, whether that's a club, just the amazing competition that we have on a weekly basis, players, friends and family, whatever it might be. And so we're really looking to create content and find those stories that are really local to fandom here in the US. And so you'll see a significant amount more content across our channels, our partner channels, just helping to tell those stories and celebrate that. We had our first ever really local content campaign that launched this season with Will Poulter, an actor who's a huge Arsenal fan. And again, him telling his story and showcasing all the different ways that you can become a fan. And then finally, I think as everyone said a little bit, how do we bring unique experiences to fans here? The large majority of our fans don't get to travel to the UK and see the amazing match day experience that we have. And so we're looking to find ways to be able to bring fun experiences, exciting experiences to fans here to really touch and feel the league, clubs, and players. So we had our 10th Mornings Live event with NBC, which is essentially a traveling event, watch party, where NBC broadcasts live from. And so it was just a tremendous way for us to bring unique experiences where partners like EA, Nike, Guinness are activating and create an opportunity for them to directly engage fans. And so hopefully we can continue to bring more experiences to fans here, again, so they can touch and feel the excitement of the league, clubs, and players.
So 320 million people, pretty high per capita income relative to the rest of the world, lots of nice stadiums, sophisticated commercial community, lots of opportunities, and you've touched on some of those. What's the biggest challenge of breaking into this market, of doing what you're trying to do with all those opportunities? What's the biggest challenge you see? Let's start with you, Andy.
So we have a great broadcast partner, like everybody's mentioned in CBS Paramount Plus, but it's a crowded marketplace, right? So I think quantitatively, soccer is the #4 sport in the U.S. and Serie A is not necessarily we're the #1 league by UEFA rankings, but not necessarily the #1 league in popularity. So really trying to break through into this market. Again, what Dee said, it's a very crowded market, but I think if we think strategically and we connect ourselves, again, to Italian culture, we use the American players as a differentiator. We also have great brands, AC Milan, Juventus, Roma, et cetera, and really lean on those as well. we think we've got a really a fighting chance to make impact in this market.
So you've obviously mentioned Christian earlier. Does it help to have a marquee American player playing in the league if you're trying to promote the league here?
100%. I mean, and it's not just Pulisic. We have 4 of the American, well, we'll see with the new coach, but 4 of the starters, out of the 11 playing in Italy. So it's an incredible differentiator for us. And we hope that Christian's success will lead to more players wanting to come to Italy and play. Christian, if you look at kind of how he's changed his demeanor since coming to Italy, he's obviously very happy, scoring goals, incredibly successful. And I think that success has also led to success for the USMNT. So I think it's a really great opportunity for us to have those players not just playing in Italy, but really thriving in Italy.
Changing the demeanor, scoring goals, that's a good thing for sure. Akash, would it help to have a couple more American players that are marquee players in the Premier League?
Yeah, I think connecting with U.S. audiences, with players from the market, is certainly helpful.
Don't come for my players.
We're fortunate to have global superstars in our league that also cut through, and so being able to tell stories about what they're doing both on and off the pitch, I think is also really exciting. I mean, I think the question you asked, some of the challenges, I think the clutter is certainly at the top of the list. The change in the access to the amount of football programming in the market over the last 5 to 10 years, where the shift from linear and streaming is going, just having to pay attention to that, and how do we continue to engage and serve our audiences with great content is a significant one. And sort of related to that, I think the other big challenge is attention spans. I think we all know younger audiences and how they consume. And clearly one of our goals is we want to drive more eyeballs to our live content, which means sitting and watching on whatever stream, on whatever screen or platform for the full 90 plus minutes. And so how do we continue to understand how those younger fans are engaging and consuming, I think is a challenge in a really, really dynamic and evolving media marketplace.
And it's an interesting space to play in, right? Because in Europe, it's all about the product. It's about the team. It's about the football you're watching. And, that is kind of where it's key. But here, it's not just that. It's this space of everything around football, the gaming, the lifestyle aspects, people picking jerseys. I've seen so many people wearing football jerseys from really tiny teams from places that I've never even heard of before. And, so there's all of that element that's coming in as well. And storytelling, for us in particular, we find that people want to align with brands that, match their own personal morals. So everything about Bayern Munich, kind of fiscal responsibility, dignity, respect, etc. People want to align with us for those reasons too.
Here on the player issue with Bayern, it was a few years ago, I said to one of your colleagues, it'd be great if you got a player from MLS to play for Bayern Munich. I should have been more specific and made it an American player, because Alphonso Davies has obviously done very well for you.
Yeah.
I think on our end is also, just to add different things from what my colleagues have already said, is if you look at the fandom, and specifically for La Liga, you have Hispanics, first generation. You don't have to explain them what La Liga is. They have been following La Liga forever to the general market. There's a big journey there. So we need to have different tactics to attract these guys and keep these guys with us, but also start attracting these other guys. Like Dee was saying, is it through lifestyle, gaming, music, events, experiences? But to do that in a sustainable way and something that can stay there after 2026. I don't think we are here just for I would say, hype moment for 2026 World Cup. I think the challenge that we all have is how do we build our operations in a sustainable way where we have some independence from our European kind of like headquarters, and because we understand the market and we know how to operate in the market, and we do it in a way that help us grow the sport to the full potential that it can have long run, not only till 2026.
How do you, just following up on that, how do you get people in the United States to care about more than 2 teams from Spain?
I mean, we have had like great stories. Obviously, Spain winning the Euros helped a lot, just with Nico Williams and Lamine Yamal. Obviously, you cannot compare that to Mbappé coming to La Liga. That has been like huge for us now. But if you look at, for example, how many academies Villarreal have in the US, or Atletico de Madrid with the underdog kind of concept of always being the ones like fighting with the big ones to try to get that third spot, second spot, there is ways to do that. And content is one of them. Like when Akash was saying how they do like tailored content-specific material for the US, we have a content studio in Guadalajara just focused regionally on creating content for that specific fans, where you are trying to tell a story that is not just what happens in the 90 minutes of the game, is why you should follow this or that team, what is the culture around, Athletic Club Bilbao playing just with local teams and staying in first division for years. There's a lot of stories that are interesting and I think can attract more like the general market and not necessarily the core fans.
So the non-Barcelona and Madrid teams, are they more supportive of what you're trying to do? And those two say, we can kind of do this on our own, or is it across the board?
No, actually, like it's very good. It's a very good question because we have a project with specific clubs, Real Sociedad, Villarreal, Sevilla, Celta de Vigo, to name a few, that have partnered with us specifically to be kind of like their agency in the US on how they create content and strategies for them, specifically just for the US. So they are starting to see that just being in the domestic market is not enough if they want to be able to grow the pie and compete and have better players in the future too, to compete with the big ones.
Right. So we got 3 leagues represented in one club, and so some of the goals may be a little bit different. So I'll start with you, Dee. I mean, what part, if any, of what you're trying to do here might be to find early the next Christian Pulisic or Alphonso Davies or whoever it might be? In the league's case, it's a little bit different, obviously, because they're not scouting for a league. Teams are doing that on their own, but is that important in what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I mean, and also it's a whole other department back in Munich that kind of look out for that. You guys will have heard we launched a joint venture with LAFC, which is basically about how do we work to better utilize and support young players and move them around and give them opportunities that they might not get at Bayern or they might not get at LAFC. So, you know, we're always on the lookout for talent, that's for sure. And I think it's really important that, you know, we've said this again and again, and it kind of goes back to Nico and what he was saying in terms of, you know, yes, you can have 2 Spanish teams, and we say this on every single panel where we're together. It's we all need to work together in terms of the marketing of the game. And when it gets to that level where football is one of the top sports, we can all break off and never speak to each other again. So that's on the marketing side. On the player side, it would be incredible to have an American player play for Bayern Munich, but unfortunately, I don't get that say.
Well, we may not be speaking to each other in a while. We'll do that soon, but we'll leave that issue aside. So for the other 3 of you, no real action on that front, right? Because you're representing a league?
I mean, we have talent ID camps, but they're actually very different than they would be on the club side. We have a program called Serie A Elite. It travels around to cities around the US, and it's more about bringing kids to Italy to study and to play football. So it's not necessarily talent that's going to clubs, but it does give them a very unique Italian experience.
Okay.
Yeah, I think here, I'll tap back to what they say, it's very difficult. Like, European clubs have, I would say, a level of demand that is very high, so you need to first scout talent very early, like 12, 13, 14 years old, with FIFA rules, as we all know, complicated. It means that the whole family needs to move over and kind of like make a living there. So some players like Yunus or others have done it in the past. They went from Premier League academies to La Liga and now Serie A. So it's kind of like, it's very difficult for the European clubs to make that commitment, and the families have to make a huge commitment. I think the best we can do is similar to what Andy was saying. We have a program called La Liga Select, where what we are doing is offering experience in Spain with La Liga clubs for these players to start developing and have international exposure as early as possible, but without breaking the American system. Let's work on how we can help also the US grow the grassroots kind of like structure to get to a point where a transfer is easier than actually have a kid going there since he's like 12, you know?
Yeah, I think look, from our perspective, as I said, first and foremost, how do we provide our fans more opportunities to engage with our league, and how do we bring more fans into the ecosystem? Two, how do we support our partners like NBC and others to continue to reach audiences? And then when it comes to the sport, really what we're focused on is our sport is amazing because it brings people together, brings communities together. One, two, it can impact youth in such a positive way. And so what we're focused on is working with local partners to be able to provide more access to the game so that we get more youth playing the game. One, they'll learn tremendous lessons, really positive impact. And two, hopefully we're starting them on a journey to fandom for the sport. And then selfishly, we want that to be able to drive to Premier League fandom.
So if we had a representative of Major League Soccer, or our women's league for that matter, the NWSL or the USL here, they might have some different views on how beneficial this is. I'm going to come to that in a second, but I want to ask a different question to start with, which is for a long time we had lots of influence from the German side of things, from the English side of things, on the technical side of the game in the United States. The foundations in the 60s and 70s were built on that. You're here now, and some of you obviously have spent most of your career in the United States, so it's a little bit different. What can you learn from the way that America, the US, does things? Not necessarily on the field, but off the field in what you're trying to do. Are there any lessons there that can be learned that are helpful? Anybody?
From my perspective, yes, massively so. And I moved over to New York 8 years ago to join the New York Cosmos. And I went from working at Liverpool Football Club at the time, where we never had to sell a ticket, to come in here. And it was all about bums in seats. It was a completely different experience for me, but I learned very, very quickly. And one thing that you guys do really great over here in America is really creating experiences around events, around games, and everything else that goes around it, the lifestyle aspects. Like it's second to none. There's lots of learnings from it. Whether it translates back into Europe is a different story, because it's a very different kind of fandom culture. But here, when we're activating, learn so much, and constantly learning about how to do it better.
Yeah, I tend to just agree with that. I've been fortunate to work at both the NBA and the NFL, so taking a lot of learnings from those previous stops in my career. And so similar to that, those leagues, one, they are on 365, 24/7. So how do you drive relevance with different types of content and storylines to be able to engage audiences, extending their leagues into new spaces. So just as Dee said, lifestyle, gaming, fashion, culture, because again, we're trying to reach all these new audiences. And then just sort of packaging, how you sort of bring the game and entertainment together to be able to reach these audiences. So lots of learnings, because again, we want to be culturally relevant to the audiences that we're trying to reach here.
I think the U.S. is super interesting from a fan engagement perspective because of how multicultural it is. So our previous media rights deal was with CBS Paramount Plus. They were a great partner. When we renewed that deal this year, we actually had to carve out for Spanish language, and Serie A is now on Fox Deportes with 3 matches per week, because obviously there's a massive Spanish language audience between La Liga and Liga MX. So how can we start to build audience across not just Italian Americans and Americans, but also Hispanic-speaking or Latin audiences in the U.S. So just thinking about all the different cohorts of audiences and how do we reach them in unique ways.
Yeah, I mean, being a foreigner, because I was born in Spain, it's been a tremendous journey. I've learned a lot. I think you guys do things in a different way, and it's always explosive and amazing when you see how everything that goes on in a game is not only about what's happening on the pitch. Sometimes there's more action when the game stops, for example, in the NBA. So that for sure is a different approach that we have had to learn, that you just talk about how good that player is technically, or how good that game or team system is. You're not going to engage with a lot of fans because you're going to lose them. They are not there yet. So when you see at things, and you were mentioning MLS or NWSL, what LAFC has built in terms of the crowd and the fandom and that specific kind of section of the stadium, there's a lot to learn there, because that's a brand that was created from scratch. There should not be an interest necessarily, and they have built a brand that goes beyond how the team performs. So how can we learn from that in order to also position other clubs or even the league? I think it's very complicated to try to have like the league being the favorite league. It's people have ties to a player or a team. So that's where I think we can also provide sort of like market intelligence to our teams on how things are done here.
So, somewhat incredibly, when I think about it, this is now in the mid-'80s, FIFA had a rule on its books that the local organization, the local federation, could actually say no to the TV broadcast of a game played in the United States by international teams. Some similar rules in England about timings and so on and so forth. I can't imagine that, I can't imagine that surviving a challenge today. The class I teach at the business school last year, we had the president of a TV network in the US, and I asked him the question, if you hadn't gotten the rights to, it doesn't matter which one of your groups that is, would you have bid more aggressively for a set of domestic rights? It doesn't matter which domestic rights I'm talking about. And the answer was, of course. So the question is, how does what you're trying to do, which is promote a league or a team in the United States that is in Europe, how does that help Major League Soccer, the development of the game, more specifically long-term, or the US national team? And I don't mean the day after the World Cup, but in general, because it is a zero-sum game at some level. Yes, we're trying to grow the pie. How does it help my long-term goal, which is the development of the game in the United States and the US men's team joining the women's team as world champions someday? And we can't get messy on our team, I got that.
I don't think it's a zero-sum game. So some research just came out that the Men in Blazers did, I think with YouGov, where Americans are very promiscuous with their soccer fandom, right? So in England, I think like you were a fan of one team and that's it. You didn't
like
think about
college
it.
football here.
Right, it's like college football, exactly. Where Americans, they tend to have a club they follow in Italy, a club they follow in Spain, a club they might follow in Germany or in the UK. So I just think generally, to use a cliche, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Well, maybe. The president of a different TV network said exactly the same 5 years ago to me. And 3 years ago, he said, 2 years ago, I'm not so sure about that anymore. But we can talk about that. Kash?
Yeah. Look, I think
You guys were the guilty ones, by the way, on the rights that were required.
Yeah. Okay, no comment. I think more investment in the game. I think Dee, mentioned, depending on what data point you look at, there's 75 to 100 million football fans in the market. Research that I've looked at from the past, the World Cup, especially with the U.S. men's national team participate, creates a bump. Imagine the World Cup on our home soil, going to create another bump. So that market, I think in all of our view, is going to continue to grow. And so more investment in providing fans opportunities to engage with the sport, whether that's watching, gaming, actually get out and playing the sport, I think is going to be positive. And I kind of agree with Andy. I don't think it's a zero-sum game because I think the pie is going to continue to grow. And I think we're just kind of scratching the surface on that. And when these global events that are coming, as I said, are just a megaphone. And so many new casual fans are going to come in and sample, which provides us just a tremendous opportunity. So, I think we talk about this a lot in the UK. If there's 75 to 100 million fans here, the UK population is maybe a third of that. The opportunity to grow is still significant in front of us.
So if the pie grows, can I get you at least to agree to keep your fixed percentage of that pie the same for now? No, okay, I'm not.
No comment again.
I agree totally with Andy and Akash. I just feel like you need to understand also even the TV windows. Like we are in the mornings. Like why are we competing necessarily with other competition or leagues that are happening at a different time zone? And on top of that,
Oh, but I'm not going to let you off that easy.
No, I know.
So I'm not going to watch 6 hours necessarily.
I know, but what I'm trying to say is it's building interest. If you are not able to, if you have more offering, you're going to be able to create more interest in the end on that sport and grow in the end, which indirectly, if you think that La Liga going, not to use the US, to Japan and tries to do something there and it's going to move the J League away, no. The local league is always going to be the biggest. It should. If the local league is not interesting, people are going to lose interest in the other leagues. So for us, if the MLS or USL or whoever it is doing well, it's going to be good for us in the long run. Because then fans get interested to see, okay, this is what I have domestically. Let's see what other offerings are there, you know?
Well, okay, but in those offerings, there's a difference in watching something on television or on streaming versus going to the stadium. And if they have a choice, and I'm not, listen, MLS is my domestic league. I watched lots of it. I'm not going to argue today that it is the level of the Premier League, and neither would Don Garber if he were here, or that it's the level of the top teams in the Italian league, or my, but that's the aspirational goal for sure.
But that's what I'm saying, that it's important that it grows. It needs to be the first league. It needs to get there, and it takes time. If you are waiting for the MLS to get there for then get the soccer where you need, no, get other offers that can interest people, and then we'll try to find what is the domestic kind of like pair-to-pair, if you want.
Okay.
And we don't work in silo, right? We have an excellent relationship with the MLS. We've worked with FC Dallas. We work with LAFC. It's extremely important that, you know, we respect the local league, we work together and help the growth of the game. That's kind of the most important thing. I see what you're saying, but in terms of from a club perspective, we see it as a partnership.
Well, we'll see next summer if Bayern is playing against one of those teams in the World Cup
Well,
Championship,
in
how
a
that
game,
goes.
it's a different story.
That will be a different story. Let me switch genders for a minute, because now the teams and the leagues have an increasing interest, whether it's the team level or the league level or the federation level, in women's football. Women's sports in the United States is taking off in a way, and I think it's gotten to the point where, at least in some of the sports, people aren't asking if this is just a moment in time. With the commissioner of the women of the NWSL here, and she said, "I'm getting tired of answering that question." So it's not just a moment in time. Any opportunities there for whether it's the teams or the affiliated teams, and obviously in the Premier League case, a lot of your teams have affiliated programs. Does that even come up on your radar in what you're doing?
I think from our perspective, as I talked about, providing access to the game, community programs, we're focused on all genders to be able to provide more access to the game, so they fall in love with the sport and, again, learn the valuable lessons. I think then from a fan perspective, we're really focused on how do we engage more females, because that's a huge market in the U.S. And with the growth of women's sport, growth in fandom with females is growing exponentially as well. And so we need to be very specific in how we address that audience, make sure they're represented in our output, in our content, in our offerings as well. So we're thinking a lot about that from a fandom perspective.
It's an extremely important growth asset for us here. You know, we are speaking with the NWSL. We are trying to see, you know, where we can partner up with the right clubs, where we can kind of create a kind of development network or something along those sorts. So we're definitely looking into that. It's not a moment in time. It's here to stay. And yeah, and we beat Arsenal. Our women's team's great. We beat Arsenal yesterday. So.
Wow. Well, now we're getting down to it.
Competition.
Had to get a sports dig in there.
And we're not even going to talk about what happened to the Barcelona women's team yesterday. Women's team.
I just think from a marketing perspective, as we look to grow, obviously, how do we target women? Because right now we are dominantly male. But to me, that's just an opportunity for us to be able to grow the sport here in the US and grow our fandom across our clubs.
It's fundamental. Like La Liga has been one of the biggest promoters of the women's league in Spain, Liga F, although they are separate entities because by law we cannot like have a joint kind of like venture together. Even in our when we did the investment fund with CVC and they took a part of the stake in the company, part of the investment had to be focused on developing the women's side of La Liga teams. So we were forcing them, and almost all franchises in first division and a lot of them in second division have a women's section now, when 5 years ago there was like very little ones. So it's super important, and then I'll say, not only that, like I will argue that using or partnering with the women talent in the US is also important for us. We brought Ali Krieger to Spain to tell the story of what Real Sociedad is doing in their academy, both men and women, and it was massive, just because of who she is and what she moves.
And you've got a few players on your team
too.
as well. Mm-hmm. So this is fantastic. We're trying to combine US interests as well as European interests. I've got a scoreboard clock down here, but in European football, the referee keeps the time, so you got to let me know how we're going to handle that one in just a minute. we've got this big event in 2 years, another big event next summer, with a little bit of luck, maybe in 2031, the Women's World Cup, in 28, the Olympics. So talk to me about what you got to try to get done in those 24 months, more or less 22 months, between now and the World Cup. That opportunity won't be there on August 1st, 2026. Anything specific that comes to mind? Any of you, please.
I mean, what I'm excited about when I think about the World Cup is not over the next 24 months, because that growth will be organic. And as you said, or maybe as Akash said, with the World Cup on U.S. soil, just more people are going to be interested in soccer no matter what we do. So that's awesome. What I think about and what keeps me up at night is retention, right? So in '94, everybody thought it was going to be a big spike, and that was just going to continue growing. And I think the sport kind of went back to where it was after the World Cup. So what I want to think about over the next 2 years is how do we put ourselves in a position as more people are just interested in the sport, that when the World Cup happens, that we are part of the consideration set, and that when the World Cup is over, they think about Serie A and they think about our clubs and they know our brands and they know the style of football they play and they know the players. Again, we've got with the American players, so that the day after the World Cup, to me, is when the real hard work begins to try and focus on retention.
So the last one, just to come back to the last one we hosted, we ended up with a red-haired, guitar-playing center back go to Italy. Lalas went to Italy a couple months afterwards, so maybe we'll repeat that. Not with him again, but with another player. Okay?
Yeah, I think in a similar vein, I think we are fortunate that we've got the most competitive league in the world with some of the biggest and best clubs and best players in the world. And so over the next couple of years, how do we continue to tell those stories with the World Cup coming? Here are some amazing things that you can experience in the sport of football. And so continue to find ways to engage fans there. We're spending a lot of time just thinking about what's happening in the host cities, the local communities. There's obviously going to be a tremendous amount of investment in the sport in all of those host cities, whether that's legacy programs or infrastructure or just helping to grow fandom for the sport. And many of those cities want to showcase themselves to a global audience. And we are fortunate that our league is broadcast in 900 million homes in nearly 190 countries around the world, and it provides a huge megaphone and opportunity for those markets as well. So there's a tremendous lead up, but I sort of agree with Andy. I think the most important thing is going to be post. How do we harness the excitement and energy that's going to come from this massive global event and position ourselves that hopefully fans want to continue to come and engage with our league, clubs, and players post 2026.
For us, it's definitely, as the only club here, how do we make people care about Bayern Munich? So in 2027, what are the touch points that we've created over the next couple of years that really put us front of mind, front of heart for people, that make them want to continue following us?
Making it a little bit more competitive at the top end might help. If you only win 8 out of 10 instead of 9 out of 10.
Hey, we didn't win the league last year.
I know, that's why I said 8 instead of 9. Fair enough.
Yeah, I'll say like when we signed that 20-year joint venture, it was kind of like a statement. We are not here just until 2026. We want to stay. We want to keep growing the sport. We want to make sure that we deliver to our fans. And I feel we understand, and it's hard to translate that sometimes in the domestic market, but also to the US fans, like, we understand somebody that wakes up at 6 a.m. and pays their ESPN Plus subscription to watch their favorite team every Friday or every Saturday or every Sunday at the same level that somebody that has a season ticket holder in Spain, that is a season ticket holder in Spain and goes to a stadium every weekend. So fans don't understand in our, at least like side, we don't understand fans as you are better or worse. So for us, how do we best serve the fans that we have in the US is kind of like key, and how do we keep growing that?
So we've got a minute and a half left. We're going to do a quick lightning round, a couple of questions. We'll see how quick you are on your feet and whether you're also diplomatic in these answers. So who's going to win the World Club Championship next summer? Akash?
Ooh, an English club.
Yeah, so that was the diplomatic, okay.
I mean, we've done it for the past years.
Oh,
so
man, come on. Get somebody to go up.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to say either Inter or Juventus.
Okay.
FC Bayern, for sure.
Well, that's fair enough. All right, now, a little bit less diplomacy required on this one. Who's going to win the Men's World Cup in 2026? We'll start here.
We are coming from a good start with what happened with the Euros, so I hope I think Spain has a very I would say, young, dynamic, and very cohesive group. So hopefully Spain.
And who do they beat in the final?
That we'll see. I don't know. Maybe.
Okay, that wasn't the diplomatic answer here.
You know, in soccer, home field means a lot.
There you
so
go.
I'm going to go USMNT.
There we go. But the home field actually in the U.S. is for a lot of different countries, right? Because you're going to have home fans in this country or else.
Fair enough.
Dee?
Fair enough.
I think the US will do well, but
That's
winning, I'm not sure. Can't say much here. I'm English, so yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one to call. I don't want to show.
You don't want to jinx us by having two people say we're going to win it. Fair
exactly.
enough. Akash?
I'm just excited to experience what 2026 is going to offer. And
that's why you're at the other end of the table from me, man, because we don't
I'm
deal
really
with that.
excited to watch the U.S. play England in the final.
There you go. Thank you very much. And maybe, well, no, won't be in the final on July 4th because we could beat them again, but leave that issue aside for now. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, panelists, for joining us today. And thank you all for being here.